Morning, everyone. So yes, I thought it is a bit windy. There's various comments about the storm Pia, which has ripped our garden up as well. But there we go. We'll sort that out later. I thought I would go over the various obstacles facing Rishi Sunak in 2024 because they are considerable when you sort of put them together. There's silent intro. I'm not muted, am I? No. The public and political difficulties that Rishi Sunak's got. Now, we're going to work on the assumption here because everyone keeps insisting, oh, he wants an October 31st election. He wants a Halloween election. So it's thinking, I still find that very difficult. Well, he might want it. It's very difficult to believe he'll get it if he wants it. So, but let's work on that assumption and look at what he's facing. And there's various problems. There's what I would call political problems. So these are effectively the problems with his own party or other elections, should we say. And then there are the problems actually going on in the country, which his government is either making worse or not doing anything to head off, which they should be doing. So let's go through the political problems first of all. Well, obviously this week we've seen Michelle Mone throwing some political hand grenades around. She has decided, what appears to be the case is that whatever this investigation is turning up may well be pressing charges. She's gone from not really saying anything to suddenly going all out with the public messaging, which suggests to me that her lawyers are telling her, yeah, you're buggered, basically. So I think she's trying to bring the others down at this point. If I'm going down, you're all going down with me. So those are going to continue to cause problems for Rishi Sunak, particularly as she's trying to put him very squarely in the frame. I still think from the Tory party point of view, they'll probably close ranks on that one. I think there's too many implicated, but nonetheless, it's going to be a problem. Then the Rwanda bill rebellion, we don't know the status of that. We know after the second reading last week that there didn't really seem to be much of a rebellion, but we do not know whether it's because they're too divided to rebel or whether it's because they're wanting to see if he's serious about amendments. And then if he's not serious about amendments, then they've got the option of voting it down at the third reading. So we don't know on that one, but let's go through either option. So let us say that at the moment, the rebellion is just too divided to do anything. That doesn't mean to say it'll still be too divided next month. All it needs, if there's enough people decide they want to bring him down, all the far right of the party need to do is to agree on a common candidate, and then it'll happen. Because you imagine, literally 2 years ago today, Boris Johnson had just lost, he'd lost his North Shropshire by-election. There were lots of Tories saying, they'd had that seat since the days of Napoleon, right? They'd had that day since Napoleonic times, that seat, sorry. And he'd lost it. He'd lost one of the safest seats in the country. And Tory MPs were going, yeah, he's going to cost us the election. And there was even talk about letters going in then. The 1922 committee actually said, we will accept letters over Christmas, because normally you wouldn't accept it over recess. They say, we will. We'll put in a special arrangement, because they really thought that that would be it for Johnson. And yet he still carried on for another half a year. So and that is because there was no consensus on what should be done. It was all right saying, let's get rid of Boris Johnson. They didn't really think they had anyone to replace him with. And in a way, they were right. So then, so you had this situation where Johnson sort of looked safe because opposition was too divided. And then all of a sudden it wasn't divided. So Sunak's still in trouble there. And if it's just because these rebels, it's not that they're too divided. They're just saying, let's see what amendments we can get. If they're not happy with those amendments, then he may well face, his government could well collapse next month still. So we don't know. But either way, it's still really bad news for Sunak. Then there's the Wellingborough by-election. So Peter Bone has now been formally recalled from Parliament. He's gone. He's not taking it very well, but then they never do. So there's going to be another by-election. It will be absolutely... Peter Bone says he's going to have more to say in the new year. I suspect what that means is he intends to fight the by-election, but obviously it depends whether the Conservatives allow him to. So we will see. Imagine the hilarity if Peter Bone was the Tory candidate. That would be insane. But there could be trouble over that. If Peter Bone wants to be the candidate, and Sunak doesn't let him, there could be some argy-bargy there, particularly if the local Conservatives still want Peter Bone to be their candidate. So I don't know that. But the by-election itself, it's quite funny because there's a lot of people think it's a safe Tory seat. It's not. It's a bellwether seat. It's one that you would expect to flip to Labour when there's going to be a change of government. But the fact that people think it's a safe Tory seat, because they won it in 2005 when Labour won the general election, and they've retained it since. That just means that the loss, and they are going to lose, by the way. I am going to put a bet as soon as Betfair, I'm not promoting any betting company. As soon as they put on betting odds for the by-election, I'll be putting a bet on, but I don't expect to get many winnings. The Labour are going to win that all day long. And then that'll be even worse for Sunak. That'll be about February. Then you've got to look at Blackpool South. So Scott Benton, who's also been, well, he hasn't actually been suspended yet because he's appealing his suspension. His appeal will fail. He's banged to rights. So, but he's doing that to add more time onto it because, you know, he needs the money. So the longer he can string the process out, the longer he gets his MP salary. So he is, you know, at some point that appeal will fail. The appeal obviously can't be heard until Parliament's back in session next month. Then they'll be suspended. Then there'll be a recall petition for him. So we might be talking March, maybe even April for that by-election. In fact, it might get so close to the local elections, they just stick it on the same day or something. I don't know if Blackpool are voting on anything mayoral. They might have a mayoral election to vote for. So they might just stick it on the same day as the local elections, which will actually reduce the damage to Sunak. But if that by-election is, say, March or April, then it's the news again focusing on the by-election, which again Labour are going to win. Then there's the local and mayoral elections in May, 2nd of May. That's, you know, if assuming the general election hasn't been called for the same day, that is going to be a bruising affair for Sunak as well. Again, assuming he's still in place. Then at some point, he's going to have to call the general election, which means TV debates and interviews. And he will either run away from them like Boris Johnson did, only it'd be worse for him, or he will turn up and be butchered. So the political problems are constant for him, absolutely constant. Then you've got the public issues, the stuff that, you know, people who don't pay attention to politics are going to be seeing. Hospitals and schools are still falling down. He's not doing anything about those. Inflation may be falling, but the cost of living is still a major problem. We've got new standards controls coming in next month, at end of next month. That will raise food inflation at least. So that will cause problems with the cost of living. And it's not entirely clear by how much, as far as I can tell. The system has been delayed for a very long time. What I would say is, politically speaking, I am actually surprised they haven't announced another delay on them. I am, because politically speaking, you do not want to introduce such an unknown quantity into an election year. It's something that they know is going to increase inflation. They know it is. But it's not entirely within their control. And they're doing it in election year. It's not sensible. Then we've got summer. If he wants to go for an autumn election, we've got summer. That means small boat crossings back in the headlines. Interest rates are staying high. They could still go up again. Now, that might be good for their core support, you know, retired home-owning pensioners, but it's not good for the swing voters tend to be the ones in their 40s and 50s who own their own home but have still got a mortgage on it and things like that. It's not good for them. NHS winter crisis now seems to start in summer. So again, if he has an election at the end of next October, that'll be in full swing. You know, also because it'll be 14 years since the Tories took office, it's natural. Even if things were sort of going all right, it's still a time when the public start to think, well, you know, maybe the grass is greener on the other side. Only it's not that. You know, it's like it's much worse this time. Things are actually really bad. And you know, they've gone along with austerity, that made things worse. They've gone along with Brexit, that made things worse. You know, the benefits just aren't there. The deficit's bad, the cost of living's bad. Trust in politics is now a record low. And you look at the polls, and it's like you look at those polls. The Tories keep saying, "Oh, Labour's lead is really soft, really weak." It used to be when they first established it, yeah. But after 2 years of a constant lead, you start to think, yeah, we don't think it's all that soft anymore. You know, the public have got used to the idea that they are going to be voting in a Labour government. It's like in their heads. You know, people are sheeple, really. There's a lot of people sort of, not necessarily consciously, but subconsciously go with the crowd. You know, we're naturally, we're a sort of pack animal. So we're sort of a bit conformist. And if people think that the general population is getting ready to vote a Labour government in, then there's a lot of swing voters, you know, they'll say to themselves, yeah, it's time for Labour. And that's the situation now. But there we go. But anyway, right. The logical course would be to not call the by-elections, go straight to general elections to minimize the impact of scandal. It, like, purely strategically, yes. And I've said this for a while. In pure strategic terms, if you think to yourself, right, the Tories are definitely going to lose the election. They are going to lose the election. They're going to fight an incredibly dirty campaign. Yes, they're going to, but it's not going to be a good campaign. All they're going to do is cause a lot of damage to the country as well as themselves. I don't want to be too glib about the election campaign because it is going to be very, very nasty. I think it's going to be a very unpleasant time, but it's going to come and they're going to lose. And you know, if you look at the poll, I did it earlier. Again, there's no. I mean, it's only a bit of fun. But if you look at the poll of polls at the moment, and you put that into electoral calculus's MRP model, it comes out at Labour winning 444 seats and the Conservatives on 134. It's like, you know, even if you're saying, well, that's not what's going to happen in the election. No, but even the kindest polls to the Tories, the kindest poll to the Tories at the moment puts them on winning fewer than 200 seats. It's like, why? You know, it's like, it's not, okay, it's not wipeout territory, but it's a long time before you're coming back to power. And, you know, you just look at what's coming and you think to yourself, right, they're going to lose. So why don't you have the election at the time that causes you the least damage? You don't wait for, because they don't know what's going to happen over summer. Like, if they don't have anything else to deal, the Rwanda plan's not dealing with small boats, let's be honest. If they don't have anything else to deal with small boats, then they've got, you know, they've got a summer. Next summer is a risk to them. If the weather is either going to help them or not. If the weather is actually really good for crossing the channel, they're going to end up with increased numbers. Why would they risk that? As for autumn itself, that's going to be a bad time. Cost of living crisis is always brought into sharper focus in autumn and winter. Why, you know, why would you go for the election in like at the end of October? You know, when the cost of living crisis is like one of the big issues for voters. In fact, the two biggest issues for voters are the cost of living crisis and the healthcare, NHS, health and social care, in fact, for many people. So, you know, it's madness. You would go in spring. In fact, you might not even wait till May. You might actually go in April. And you think, well, why April? Because if you go in April, then you may not suffer as badly in the local and mayoral elections because it's done with now. People don't, you need to use it as a protest vote. Whereas you imagine if you have it now, in theory, if you have it on the same day, you could say the same thing because people know they can vote one way for the government and one way for their local mayor or council. But there may be people still going into that of the mind that they're voting Labour or voting Lib Dem or whoever is not the Tory candidate. So you know, I would say, arguably at this point, the best advice for the Conservatives would be to have an April general election now. But the problem with that is if Rishi Sunak does that, first of all, what's the benefit to him? If we work on the assumption that he's just trying to fleece as much money from the public purse as possible, then that means he's only got a few more months to do so. So what's the benefit to him? There isn't a benefit to him. Then you say, so what's the benefit to Tory MPs? Because they're going to lose. You're basically saying to Tory MPs, we're going to go for the election now. And they go, but aren't we going to get hammered? Yeah, we are. Like, are you going to say to them, but we think we'll get hammered even worse after summer? Because won't they say to you, well, haven't you got a plan? Because like, what sort of leader are you if you're of the view that you can't actually help us now? Because Rishi Sunak campaigned specifically on the promise of helping them win the election. I'm going to win the election. So it's like, how do you do that? Right, Graham's telling terrible Napoleon pun jokes now. You say, still hoping Tory rebels will force his hand for an election. Well, I mean, they could do, but again, the problem is, if you think about a lot of the Tory MPs on the far right, there's quite a lot of them going to lose their seats in the election. So even they have a bit of a difficulty with this. And that's why I wonder if this rebellion is a bit too divided. It's not necessarily divided in that they can't agree on who should replace Sunak. Maybe they can't even agree whether they should. Because if they bring his government to a standstill, like, you know, they did, like others did with Boris Johnson, and force the change of leader, then isn't there an issue that they hasten the general election and their own demise? Because there's quite a few influential MPs on the far right, they're losing their seat. You know, Jacob Rees-Mogg, very good chance of losing his seat. Simon Clarke, he's going to lose his seat. You know, there's quite a few of them. You could actually end up, I haven't done an analysis of this. I don't think it's worth my time. But if you do an analysis of the MPs who are going to lose their seats, I think I've seen suggestions that you're probably going to end up with the far right having a smaller level of influence in the parliamentary party. So the far right are effectively caught between a rock and a hard place. On the one hand, they're not getting what they want from Rishi Sunak. On the other hand, if they force that early general election, then it's they could just be reducing their own power because they'll be gone. I mean, Liz Truss will still be there. Suella Braverman will still be there, unless there's some really stunning tactical voting going on. Captain Bart Roberts, £5 super chat, thank you very much. Says, have a cool Yule, y'all. It's going to be at the moment. We've got a bit of a storm going, haven't you noticed? But there we go. Penny Murdoch could also lose a seat as well. I mean, like, depending on what polls you look like, I've just sort of said, if you look at the poll of polls and you plug that in, you end up with the Tories on 134 seats. Now, if they end up in a situation where they actually only win 134 seats, yeah, there's a lot of prominent Tories losing their seats. There's a lot of them. You know, there are some genuinely safe seats, lots of Portillo moments. Do you know what? I'm actually going to say I don't think there'll be any Portillo moments. Because Michael Portillo, there were two features. You know, it depends on how you define a Portillo moment. But there were two features to Michael Portillo losing his seat in 1997. The first is that it was unexpected. So people didn't expect it. Whereas I think now the level of analysis on individual seats means that it's much harder to get a genuine big surprise in a general election. The second feature of Michael Portillo is that it potentially impacted the future direction of the Conservative Party because people saw him as a potential replacement for John Major. So obviously losing his seat meant that he was no longer in the race. Now, we don't know whether he would have won the leadership contest or not. It may still have been William Hague. But at the same time, there was a good chance he would have won. And even if he hadn't, he would still have been there in the parliamentary party, potentially able to take over from William Hague instead of Ian Duncan Smith, say. So those are two features. So I think for there to be a Portillo moment, you're having to talk someone that you don't expect and someone who is expected to shape the future of the Conservative Party after the election. So you'd have to be talking someone like Suella Braverman or Liz Truss losing their seat. Not necessarily, I'm not suggesting that they'll bring Liz Truss back as leader, but she is a leader within the parliamentary party. And she is, if you remove her from the parliamentary party, then that could affect the direction the party takes. So I'm not sure there will be a Portillo moment. A Portillo moment for me is not just big name that falls, because there were several big names that fell at the time. Isn't it time we stopped having election on Thursdays? Why not Sunday? Well, why indeed? Yes, we know why, because the Conservatives don't want it there, but why don't Labour put it at a more sensible time? Indeed. I think Ian Duncan Smith will get the mellow moment with other opposition candidates chanting out, out, out at the count. I don't know. I mean, Ian Duncan Smith's been out of it for so long now. Do people even care about him? Hayden saying, what was the Portillo moment? So Michael Portillo, who was a senior member of John Major's government in the 90s, so a senior Conservative minister. And in 1997, when the Tories lost and Labour came in, he lost his seat. It was not expected. Obviously, Labour were expected a landslide victory and they got it, which meant, yes, the Tories were going to lose lots of seats. People did not think Michael Portillo would lose his seat. They thought he was safe. And people were talking about him, even when people were talking about the Tories losing power. So obviously they knew John Major would resign. I actually loved the way John Major did resign after I say, when you sort of talk about Tories, if there's any Tories where you can sometimes go, yeah, they're not too bad, it would be John Major. Because when the election results came out, he basically went, right, I'm resigning and off to the cricket, which I thought was brilliant. Michael Portillo, very senior member of the government. He was being talked about as a replacement for John Major when John Major stepped down, and he lost his seat. And people did not see that coming. So that's... Say Hague seemed relatively normal for a Tory. No, William Hague was always very far to the right. If you compare him to some of the Tories now, he was just aware. He was one of those who understood public views. He knew that his views were well out of kilter with the public's. He had enough self-awareness to play the political game. He just, as it happens, wasn't able to do it well enough. But, he understood where he was in relation to the public. Whereas the current Tories, there's so many of them think that they're mainstream. You've got these extremists on both the left and the right of politics. They think that they're in tune with general public feeling, and they're really not. Unfortunately, we're losing Caroline. It'll be Caroline Lucas at general election. Has been great local and national MP. So that seat of the 3 in town is up for grabs. Yes, Labour are wanting that seat. But I mean, this is why, I keep saying the Green Party really throughout the party should be focusing on proportional representation. I heard someone saying recently in terms of like there's Green Party activists that take the view, but for PR, but that's ages away. But the climate crisis is now. And it's like, yeah, the climate crisis is now. In fact, the climate crisis was decades ago. But how are you going to influence the climate crisis when you're not even in opposition? Never mind, you're nowhere. If you don't even win one seat, how are you going to influence the climate crisis? You're not going to, are you? So they should have been focusing on PR. But anyway, William Hague's The Young Conservatives was weird. Yes, that's what, he was very into his politics. He even spoke at the Tory party conference as a young lad when Margaret Thatcher was Prime Minister. Did I see the last leg's humiliation of Braverman calling a dick of the year? I saw a bit of it, yeah. I don't know this actual humiliation. Because The politics is so divisive these days. It's not as bad as in America, but still, it's so divisive these days. It's almost like a badge of honor. Like you see it on both sides, don't you? On on the sort of liberal left side, if a Tory blocks you, you go, oh, they've got people claim it as a badge of honor that, or you'll see people saying, oh, we must be doing something right. We're upsetting all the right people. And you just think so it's the same thing. She'll just say, well, oh, I've upset the snowflakes on the left. Oh, I must be doing something right. So I don't really see it as a humiliation because everything's too tribal. With the by-election results, who would be a surprise if they lost the general election results? I think you mean Sunak, Braverman, or Priti Patel. So out of those three, Braverman's the safest seat. Priti Patel and Sunak would be a surprise if they lost their seat, but they could. If you're on for a proper wipeout, if you're into wipeout territory, they could well do. I mean, if you look at the election, the gap in the polls, people expect in election year for them to tighten a little bit, and they may well tighten a little bit. And the reason why you expect them to tighten a little bit is right now what the polls struggle to take account of, and most don't even try, is there's lots of people saying they don't know how they're going to vote. So at the moment, Opinion try to factor those in, but I think they do it badly. Not that there's an easy way to do it. But most polls just go, okay, you don't know who you're going to vote for, so we'll just exclude you for now. But people expect there's a load of don't knows who are going to turn out and vote Tory. So we expect the polls to tighten. But what if they don't? What if, despite the fact that, yes, there's a load of people who say they don't know, but ultimately will go and vote Tory, what if the events that are coming next year, which I've just gone through a list of at the start of this stream, what if there's a load of those voters actually don't turn up and hold their nose and vote for the Tories? What if they say, there's no way I can bring myself to vote for this shower? So what if the polls don't tighten? What if we are in a situation where the Tories end up with between 100 and 150 seats? In a position like that, yes, Rishi Sunak and Priti Patel, their seats are in jeopardy. I strongly suspect Suella Braverman's is not. Rowan Atkinson's Tory conference speech on not the 9 o'clock news was partly based on Hague, I think. I'm not sure about it because wasn't that before William Hague did his speech? I'm not sure. Because not the 9 o'clock news. I was very young when that was on. I wasn't always allowed to watch it. But anyway. One Pagan saying, no, she was recorded worrying how viral that would go. Okay. I mean, if I were in her position, I wouldn't. I would have billed it as, oh, I'm upsetting all the right people, must be doing something right. Because that's the usual thing these days. And again, you get it on both sides. Both tribes do the same thing. Oh, I'm upsetting all the right people, I must be doing something right. And it's just like, yeah, okay. Could Braverman lose her seat because her local Tories see it as saving the party from potential leadership? That would require a hell of a conspiracy to do that. I think what would need to happen for Braverman to lose her seat, you would need tactical voting groups locally to really give the public the impression that her seat is up for grabs. And that's difficult because here's the thing. There will be enough voters in her Fairham something or other, I can't remember what it's called, in her, because it's a new constituency. There'll be enough local voters who will be absolutely happy to vote her out. But it's such a safe seat. In seats like that, you often get a lot of people, will just not turn up, go, what's the point? My vote won't count. What's the point? Which again is the argument for PR. So you'd really have to be able to convince local people that there's a real move to get rid of her. And we need everyone to get out and vote. And like, what's the harm in getting out and vote? And yeah, we've got a real shot at this. How do you convince local people that that's a thing? You would need a very visible campaign. There'd need to be a local campaign, tactical voting campaign that's really gunning for her, gets themselves in the papers, really gives people confidence that there's something could happen here. That would be what would need to happen. It might. But so if that happened, that would be the Portillo moment. Rishi Sunak less so, because he's expected to bugger off to California anyway. Priti Patel, possibly. I possibly would regard her as close to a Portillo, because she may well be trying to put herself in the frame to replace Sunak, whether before or after the election. So Priti Patel loses her seat. That might be a Portillo moment. There you go. Oh, it looks like Hague did his speech in 1977. There you go. All those events run into together, because I was when 1977, I was 1 year old, so I did not watch his speech. 79, I will have only just been watching television, and it will not have been not the 9 o'clock news. It would have been a year or two later when I was watching that. So there we go. Okay, so it might have been based on William Hague then. So argument about the solstice. Yes, normally we talk about the solstice as being on the 21st, but remember, because it is a celestial event, technically, it doesn't stick to it doesn't follow our rules, man. It doesn't care about our Julian calendar. So it's yes, the actual solstice technically will be tomorrow. The Druids will know. But couldn't they replace Sunak with Starmer? Well, the public aim to replace Sunak with Starmer, yes. But the Tories don't really want that. Oh, just me and videos, €50 super chat. Thank you very much. Happy early Christmas. It's not that early. It's like a few days away. But there we go. Play School in 79 for Phil. I did watch Play School, yes. I can't specifically remember anything from 79 though, because one of my earliest television memories is of Tom Baker turning to Peter Davison. So that would be Logopolis. I think that was 1980, 1981, 1980 maybe. So that was one of my very earliest watching the Doctor regenerate. So I barely got to know who the Doctor was, and all of a sudden he was regenerating. I don't remember being confused though. Gregorian calendar, yes, sorry. Julian, then Gregorian. But there we go. But we're sort of running out of time there anyway. Thank you. Don't forget to click the like button and to subscribe for further content. Can Sunak call a general election during parliamentary recess? I mean, he can announce it whenever he likes. I just don't expect him to. You know, Rishi Sunak ultimately wants money. That's what he's in politics for, I think. I think it's fair to say. I've seen no evidence that he's interested in anything else. He wants money. So, you know, he will want to hang on for as long as possible. It's just how long can he hold on for? But there we go anyway. Thanks very much. I'll just say there, when I get Pagan, Phil, will Labour be pulling the plug on Freeports? Hope they do. Yes, I hope they do as well. I honestly don't know what their plan for that is. We shall just have to wait and see on that one, I'm afraid. But thanks very much, everyone. Have a good Christmas, because I don't know, we may have something on Friday, I guess. But for those who aren't there for that. And until next time, I will see you later.